Call to order the 7 o'clock City Council regular meeting on December 17th, 2013. Everybody join me for the pledge allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Middleton.
Here.
Council President Henderson.
Here.
Councilor Grant.
Here.
Councilor Folsom. Here. Councilor Butterfield.
Here.
Councilor Langer.
Here.
Councilor Clark. Here. Thank you.
On the consent agenda tonight, we have approval of November 5th, 2013 City Council meeting minutes, approval of November 19th, 2013 City Council minutes, approval of December 3rd, 2013 City Council minutes, Resolution 2013-063, canvassing returns of the November 5th, 2013 Washington County general election, proclaiming results and directing the city recorder to enter the election results in the record. Resolution 2013-064, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with AKS Engineering and Forestry for the design of the Columbia Street Regional Stormwater Facility.
I'll move consent. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next.
Eagle Scout.
That's what I'm trying to find it. Is the Eagle Scout? No. Okay, our next presentation, it's a sad one. It's a recognition for our TVF&R, Captain Dan Atkinson, who is retiring at such a young age. I'm surprised. But I'd like to read a little history of Dan. Captain Dan was promoted to captain in 1999 and was assigned to Station 33 in Sherwood. During his 13 years in Sherwood, he demonstrated an outgoing, engaged, and positive attitude. His leadership is known throughout the district, and many TVF&R officers have chosen to work under him. He is currently a role model for TVF&R and serving and interfacing with the communities they serve. Captain Dan provided community-based leadership for many volunteers who have worked at Station 33. He respects their sacrifice to the community, and they respect the commitment to them as volunteers and as community members. He treated them as his crews, and he has often commented that he is honored to have him at this station. Whether it's a community safety fair, city staff luncheons, with Rudy gone, it's changed. Yeah. And all these other examples of the government-community partnership, he has made concerted effort to get to know his citizens, and that effort has paid off, putting him on a first-name basis with the community, who fondly refer to him as Captain Dan. Over the years, Captain Atkinson has been humble, thankful, professional, and positive servant to the citizens of Sherwood and to the crews who have served his station. His legacy will live on for decades, and he will not be forgotten. And that's true. I worked with him for years, and it was an honor to work with him. We've never had such a positive relationship with anybody on a fire department like this, and it's just been fantastic. And I know it'll continue on, because I know some of the people that will be continuing this on. You have a battalion chief, I think he's a Liverpool fan, but other than that, it's okay. It's okay. But it's been great. We had meals over there, and you know, it was always fun to see Dan, and it was great. And he wanted to thank Emergency off TV. We were talking at an accident scene one night. They're the reason that the fire departments do the rescue too. So it's just been a fantastic time, and I don't think anybody here can say we won't miss you, really, and that's from our heart. It really is. So I'd like to pass we have a real cool little plaque for you, and something even better, a jacket that says City of Sherwood. Oh, man. That'll get you a lot of freebies around here. And so if the council will come down, I think we all really need to shake and thank Dan's hand. Dan's hand, whatever. So you get a nice, pretty plaque, everybody, and they're really cool jacket. So he'll be a member of the city from now on. Really well. He just is a great guy, and you guys are all great. We love you all here. I don't see this many that often, but a lot of cities don't have such great relationships with the fire departments as we have here. It's just been fantastic, and you guys are such professionals. It's unbelievable what you do for us. So, like I say, I don't know if anybody else has anything to say, but man, I am really thankful, Dan. You've been great.
I knew I was going to get choked up, so I wrote some of my thoughts down. I hope you don't mind. It doesn't sound too bosh or so impersonal, but I just wanted to take a minute and say that I've been blessed to serve the city of Sherwood since 1999 as the captain of the fire station. It's been an amazing and wonderful experience to serve in the 5th best small city in America, a place you call home and where families live, work, and play. I'm really just one in a long line of men and women who dedicated their lives to keeping this family called Sherwood safe and secure for over 100 years. The citizens of Sherwood became aware that they needed fire protection when in 1898 and then again in 1911, catastrophic fires ravaged the city. And they joined together to keep their families and the town safe from fire by building a 75-foot water tower, wooden board water mains, and purchased fire hose to protect their homes and businesses. The first volunteer fire department was organized, and the fire laddies selected W.P. Fisk as their first fire chief in 1915. And this legacy of service continues to this day with our volunteer and career firefighters available and ready to serve 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. When I was first assigned to Station 33 here in Sherwood, it became immediately clear that our fire station was not just a Fulton Valley Fire and Rescue Station. The families that live here take ownership in their station and the volunteer and career personnel who work here. And I felt cared for, I felt valued and loved by the city staff and the very citizens that I had been charged to protect and serve. You've made me a family member of your wonderful town. When you call 911 for help, or come to the fire station for assistance, or bring your children to the fire station for a tour, you will always receive more than just a quick and efficient trained professional responding to your question or emergency. You'll also get a compassionate, caring family member who will welcome you in and take the time to value you and treat you as a member of the Sherwood family. Because at the end of the day, it will not matter how well we perform. We do not also share, let me finish, start over. At the end of the day, it will not matter how well we perform if we do not also share our sincere compassion, care, and respect to the ones we serve. So thank you all for allowing me to be a part of the fine community family called Sherwood. Thank you guys again. Appreciate it.
When I was talking to the fire chief, he was saying this is going to be one of the harder places to replace the captain too. So the new captain will do great, but yeah.
Big shoes.
Mayor, just one more thing. We have an open house January 25th for those who would like to come from 2 to 5. So it'll be an open house just for, it'll be a shift or two from my last shift. But those who would like to come, that would be awesome.
That's the 25th?
Yeah, from 2 to 5.
2 to 5.
Is that a Saturday?
Yes,
And it's here at this station.
it's at this station.
And that's your last day?
The
Or-
31st will be, we moved it
Oh, okay.
on to the 25th just because it was easier for family and for everybody on the weekend.
What are you going to do when you retire?
I'm going to give myself enough time to experience retirement for a little bit, but I'm not a sit-at-home kind of guy, so I don't know what at this stage, but I do know I need a little bit of time to make an adjustment because it's been 43 years of total service and 39 years as a career firefighter, and I haven't known anything else, so I need some adjustment time.
I've got a hobby for you. Yeah. You can ride with me, it's fun.
Yeah.
Our next presentation is, with the city manager, is going to be the code of conduct.
Yes, Mayor and Council. This is actually an item that originally was scheduled to be in a work session, and when we talked about that work session and where we should have it, the mayor suggested we have it in this open session, because if you do end up giving direction to staff to draft an ordinance enacting a code of conduct, that would affect the public, and there'd be great interest in this. So that's why we're doing it here. So this is really a work session for you as council. I'm going to introduce this subject, and then I'm going to invite Dave Nelson, the CIS Public Safety Manager, to come up, because I want you, before we get into the details of what a code of conduct is, know and understand kind of where this comes out of. Dave will talk more in detail, but we've been working very closely with CIS to evaluate safety for our staff and employees here in the building. CIS is our insurance agent and risk management firm, so one of the suggestions that came out of that analysis was adopting a code of conduct, like some other jurisdictions have. So the document that you have in front of you is a very preliminary draft of an ordinance, and then it's based on the Tigard ordinance that's been adopted and rarely used, but it has been used in Tigard. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave to give you the broader picture, and then we'll come down to the actual code and have a discussion. So thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm not sure how many of you have been, it's been a few years since I've been here, so I don't remember how there's been some change, but I'm not sure if all of you are aware of what the role of CIS is, and so I thought I'd give you kind of a brief overview of what services we provide to the city of Sherwood. As Mr. Gall indicated, we are the insurance service company organization that insures the city of Sherwood. And we insure most of the cities in the state, with the exception of Portland, Salem, Eugene, and Medford. Every other city in the state we insure in about 28 of the 36 counties. My specific role is the public safety manager, which oversees the risk management division and provides risk management services to all of our public safety members. So I work with your chief, and since I've been with CIS, I've had a number of interactions with the city. Going back to 2010, it started off with doing some workplace violence training with different staff members, educating them about what workplace violence is, ways to see it, observe it, ways to react to it, report it. 2011, I believe it was, I conducted the best practice review with the city, with the police department. I think that's when I was here last, presenting the best practice reviews, going over what that meant. 2012, I believe, or early 2013, we started doing the security assessment with the chief and I, looking at all the different buildings within the city, making some determinations on ways to improve some of the risk and security. And also in 2013, the chief invited me in to do a claim review with his administration staff and looking at how claims have occurred within the police department, looking at some risk management techniques to reduce those claims in the future. So that's kind of just by way of background of some of the things that I do with the city of Sherwood and other cities around the state. I was asked to look at the proposal that you folks are looking at or discussing tonight, as far as whether, from a risk management perspective, whether this is going to be a fit into the overall security. And I look at this as kind of an extension of an exclusion, if you will. When I worked as the chief in Troutdale and was the city administrator in Troutdale, we had an exclusion ordinance that would address behaviors, if you will. If members of the public would violate park rules, as an example, they could be excluded from the park or trespassed for a period of time. They came back and they would be trespassed. And when I was presented with this information, I looked at it as kind of an extension of that, that's allowing that to occur within city buildings. This is obviously a policy decision for you folks, whether this is something that you want to have within your city, and not for CIS to really recommend or approve. It's just, we think it's a good idea from the risk management perspective and fitting into the overall security. It does give some tools to staff to contain or address some behavioral issues if citizens are coming in, making threats to staff, making threats to each other. This is a tool that can be used. So I'm not sure what questions you guys have. I'd be happy to try to address any questions that you folks have, and see where it's going from there. I'm not sure, is this a work, and you say it was a work session? Can I have an open work session?
Yeah.
Okay. So with any questions, I'd be happy to address.
You said Tigard has it. Do other cities, and Troutdale has it?
The city of Tigard has, I think this is the model that
Oh, okay.
folks are drafting. When I was in the city of Troutdale, we didn't have this exact model. What we had is an exclusion ordinance. So if individuals would come in primarily into our parks, then they could, and if they violated the park rules, that could be things from, not having their dog on the leash, or, bringing alcohol into the park, or those kind of, if they were, violating criminal statutes, they could also be excluded. And they would be excluded for a period of time, either 30, 60, or 90 days. And then that would not allow them to come back into the park for that period of time. If they did return, then they would be cited for trespass. And that's what we have. A number of cities around the state have exclusion ordinances like what Troutdale had. I'm not sure if you guys have it here for your parks or not, exclusions.
No. I think I'm looking at Kristen, the only exclusion policy that exists currently is the library.
So this would include parks also?
Yes, the way it's drafted would be all city property. So it's very broad in terms of its scope. So as Mr. Nelson said, this is really a policy choice, and that's why I'm bringing it to you. I think it's a tool that if we had available to deal with those very rare occasions, we're always looking for as many tools as possible. I don't think it would be used very often. And I'm bringing it to your attention because I have staff consistently asking me, what can we do to protect the work environment?
Portland had one, and wasn't it overturned, their one on the drugs, and in that one location? Was it because it wasn't broad enough, or was?
Portland's not a CIS member, so I'm not sure.
But I mean, it was the state the courts overturned
Was
it.
this the one where they tried to have the drug-free zone?
Yes, yes.
I don't know the results of it, but I have a vague recollection that there was some discussions about whether or not it was what they did. But I do know that the park exclusions that we had in Troutdale and other members of CIS have currently, those have so far been all upheld.
Yeah, theirs just might have been too narrow in scope,
I think you're right, Mayor, that the drug-free zones were overturned eventually. So, Chris, do you have anything from a legal standpoint to add?
No, there are a number of, it's a work in process right now. The draft ordinance that I think you have available to you, I was reading through it again tonight, and it needs some editing, but there are also issues that we would want to make sure we address, things like making sure what property or person is excluded from. If they're causing a problem in a park, are they just excluded from park property or all city property? The person in charge, you have to identify a person in charge, and that should be clearly delineated. Also, any actual notice should have the correct information. For example, the reason for exclusion, the length of time, places that they're excluded from, the right to appeal, and so on. And the only other thing is making sure that any exclusions that end up within a citation result in a citation for a violation, not a misdemeanor for a whole host of other reasons.
Yes.
So those are some of the things that we want to keep in mind as we move through the process if you think this is a useful tool. And with respect to Portland, they do have an exclusion ordinance. The drug-free zone, I'm not sure of the current status. It's gone up and back down a couple of times through the appellate process. I don't know if they've given up on it or they finally got one that survived judicial review, but it did go up and down a couple of times.
I have a question. If you have a question, go ahead. Oh, okay. So if we were to pass an ordinance like this and amend or add this to our code, if somebody is cited, then it goes to the municipal court?
Yes.
And did we have Judge Jack review this?
He did an initial review and made some suggestions, some minor
Okay.
changes, and he's supportive of the overall ordinance. He lengthened some of the time and has changed some language from shall to may to give him some more discretion if he saw any appeals. But generally, he was supportive the first time he looked at this.
Okay,
So
thank you.
My concern is if we have an altercation, who's going to take care of escorting this individual out of the building? Are they going to call their supervisor? Are they going to call the police?
I would
What's the
hope-
process?
I don't set the internal process. I would hope that that 911 would be called and Sherwood PD would be responding and they'd be doing the escorting. They're the ones who are trained for that. I can't recall I think it gave the city manager
Yes.
some authority to be the person in charge, did it not?
yeah, it really depends on the severity of the situation. I mean, if it's someone's feeling physically threatened, they should call 911. So that's standard with or without this ordinance. So
Will that be added to this ordinance, the process?
I wouldn't put in the ordinance per se. I mean, when you say
Well, I think
what?
if we're going to have a code like this and it's going to be public, I think the public ought to be aware of, how the process works and what's
Sure.
going to happen and who's going to take care of it.
I think the reason for designating a person in charge is to authorize that person to order somebody to be excluded. So, for example, if Craig Sheldon, if there was somebody there in the Public Works building who was being disruptive or causing a problem, I'm confident he could cause the person to be removed from the building and issue a violation, or I'm not exactly sure when and how the violation form gets filled out and handed to the person, but it may not, I guess the point is, it may not be necessary in all circumstances for the police to be called, and further putting burden on, the chief's manpower. So, it's a good issue, though. I mean, I'm thinking out loud here, but I think the way I had conceived of it, that's the purpose of designating an authorized person for each facility.
Councilor Folsom, you had a question?
Yeah, that was exactly my question is, what would it look like if we don't have necessarily physical threat, but clearly abuse of our staff and causing a disruption in the ability to do business, as it says in this language? What does it look like for the employee? Do they walk away, get their supervisor? Do they walk away, ask their
Are
supervisor?
you talking now or after the ordinance?
Well, if this is on our books, what would happen? What could the employee or staff person depend on if something like that came up? What would be the process? And
I think if I'm going to use the community development counter or the
Right.
ticket paying. That's an area where we have some
Potentially.
unhappy folks at times. And sometimes people are a little bit out of control. So what would happen without this ordinance today is certainly a supervisor would be contacted right away, or probably get back to me because I'm in the back, and people would come out to help support the situation and kind of diffuse the situation. And hopefully calmer minds would prevail and nothing would happen. But if someone didn't calm down and didn't deal with the warning, right now we can't do anything. I don't have any authority to exclude anyone from the building when they're acting out of what is really a code of conduct in a sense. So that's why I'm looking for something more, because my staff is looking for something more.
Right,
Because they have felt beat up by
absolutely.
individuals at the front counter on numerous occasions in this past year. So this is really an attempt to try to find balance in terms of people's free speech rights, but also protect the work environment. and I have a responsibility to protect my staff as the city manager of this organization. So I'm looking for a tool or additional tools. This is a tool that other cities have utilized, and I'm presenting it to you as a policy board. Do you want us to continue working on this or not? If you don't, we will drop it. We have plenty of other things to do, as you know.
Well, I'm very supportive of what you're describing. So the next step, calmer minds did not prevail. You would then ask the person to leave and issue them a citation of some sort.
Yes.
And that would be the teeth
Jeff, go ahead if
in the
you're...
ordinance. Is that right?
Sorry.
Sorry, you said so.
This would probably operate, as Mr. Nelson said, much like other existing exclusion processes. And so let me just run through a typical process. Somebody does something that's not okay. They're told by the person in charge, that's not okay, you need to stop that. If it's at a certain point where that person feels they need to leave, they ask them to leave. If they leave, it's over. If they refuse to leave, certainly staff is not going to engage and say, well, I'm going to throw you out. They're going to call for assistance. We're going to show up. The way that I have operated in a similar process is then I show up, I meaning the police, and say, hey, you've been asked to leave by the person in charge. You need to go. Come back another day. Calm down. The whole point of this is to maintain decorum. And the person leaves, once again, the problem's over. The key thing to understand is if at some point the person does something that is egregious enough that the person in charge wants them excluded, it's not a citation. It's simply an exclusion notice that lays out what the problem was, exactly where, I mean, if we follow the model that other places have used, it says this is exactly where you're excluded from, this is the period of time. You can't come back during that period of time. If you, quote, it'll cite the code. If you do, you'll risk being arrested for trespass. So the first step is nothing more than that exclusion notice. It carries no punitive sanctions other than you can't come back for a period of, say, 2 weeks or whatever. And then the only time it becomes a criminal matter wherein a citation would be issued is if somebody then returns once they've been excluded. So I want to clear that up because
That helped.
somebody loses their temper, it gets out of hand, they're not going to get arrested unless they violate some law. They're going to get asked to leave. If they refuse to leave, potentially, if that went far enough, if an officer showed up and said, hey, look, you've been asked to leave, you need to go, I'm not leaving. If you don't leave, you're going to be trespassed. I mean, it could get to that point, but that's really not how the process is laid out. So hopefully that helps clarify that.
That's exactly what I needed. Thank you.
And counsel, the operative provisions there are found in that section .090, enforcement and exclusion. It kind of lays out that process that the chief just described. Particularly G, you have to first give the person a warning and a reasonable opportunity to desist from the violation, and exclusion does not issue if the person promptly complies with the warning.
Perfect.
But, yeah.
What's the difference between that and this? You do trespass letters, don't you?
Yes.
Can't you do that in a city facility too, or not?
Yes. Come on. I'm afraid to move this thing because it barks at us. Excellent point, Mary. Yeah, the other terminology that's often used for this process is the person has been trespassed from. But I was trying to stay away from that because it creates confusion with you've been arrested for trespass. But any property owner has the ability to exclude or trespass somebody from their property. That's really what we're talking about, except that oftentimes a trespass is you're gone and you don't come back.
Right.
I have trespassed you from the property and you are not to return ever. So the typical place we see that would be in a shoplift. Shoplifter's caught. They take him in, they process him, they issue him a trespass notice that says you're not to come on any more blank properties in this town or any other place where we have a store. You can't come into them anymore. You're trespassed. And if they show up then, and it's discovered they're arrested. So the difference between that and the exclusion is exclusions are generally for periods of time. They're really, hey, you acted inappropriately, and so we're going to take away your privilege to visit this park, building, or whatever for a period of time. So, but the mayor's right. It's essentially you're trespassing them for a period of time. And yeah, we do those now. We work with businesses and property owners in the community and do exactly as he said.
And if I can add one thing, that we've used this in other communities, and I'm thinking of a small community down in Southern Oregon where there's an individual that was coming into City Hall on a frequent basis, causing some issues with staff, and that individual was excluded. That doesn't preclude them from doing business with the city. They were just restricted to do business via phone or letter or email. They was not physically allowed to come into the building because of their actions. So they were still able to communicate and conduct city business. It just had to be done in a different manner.
Do we still have issues with the small number of kids who were at one time, we've heard, damaging park facilities such as tennis courts or perhaps being out here in the new plaza and that type of thing? And if we do, could this be a tool that could have been used where, it might have been an easier way to deal with that, where all we could do before is just chase them away if they got their skateboard, but now we actually have something short of arresting them to deal with the problem? Two questions there.
Well, let me answer kind of the first one. I think we, a few years ago, had an issue and initially brought it to council to come up with some sort of legislation making it clear that that type of skateboarding, skating, other things on city property, especially around the entrances to property, was a problem. At that time, council asked us to be more proactive of trying to talk to them, make sure that they understood what the rules were. We did. That didn't seem to work, and so eventually council ended up passing legislation that made it clear that those activities were not allowed. And we really haven't, from my perspective, I haven't seen much of that activity. We certainly still see some damage on some city properties from time to time from skateboarders or other things, but certainly the issues that were involved with that were, especially right outside of City Hall, people were nearly running over or literally hitting people trying to come in and do business with the city did go away.
We still have that issue. I think it's gotten better through everybody's efforts. You're probably not going to see it for 3 to 6 months, yeah. But every summer, and this is probably the biggest location, yeah. We, at least once a week, we're reminding folks that they can't skate. So the second part of your question is yes, I think that this would be useful in that because it would provide a non-criminal sanction to say, hey, look, you can't do that. Didn't I talk to you last week? I'm going to exclude you for a period of time, and you can't come to any parks. I mean, that's the common park exclusion program that, as Kristen said, we don't have that you see in other places. So yeah, that would be another way of handling those issues as well.
Thank you.
So I heard it mentioned that staff's had some issues previously. What if we do have an altercation and we haven't passed this and done anything about it? Does it affect any insurance claims with regards to, say, employee safety and whatnot, if they've warned their employer that, hey, I don't feel safe in this environment, you didn't do anything about it, and now what I warned you about happened, so does that put the city at any more liability?
You have two possibilities under that scenario. One is if the employee is injured, either physically or emotionally, you could have some workers' compensation issues that you have to address. City of Sherwood does not have workers' compensation with the CIS. You have with SAFE. But the other prong, the other option that you could face is that if the employee was really injured to the point that felt that this city staff or the management administration did not do enough to protect them, then they could file a tort notice or under the general liability policy of the city that would involve us. And so then we would end up defending the city on that tort notice. That would be pretty unlikely. I can't see that really happening. Most likely it would fall under the Workers' Compensation Act.
One other common thing that's come up whenever we're talking about passing a new ordinance is what is the problem we're trying to fix? And I've kind of heard a few generalizations, but can somebody say a little bit more about the sort of problems and the nature of the problem that staff may have had that we're targeting here? Just so as we're reading it, that we can make sure that the language is addressing the need.
I'm out here on a daily basis, so I don't know what the specifics are, but so I'll turn it over to your staff to answer that question.
So, Counselor, there have been, just from recollection, probably 2 to 3 times that I can think of where we've gone to Public Works because somebody has shown up at the customer counter there and has just, in the process of sharing their frustration and venting, they just get out of control. And when staff says, "Hey, we got to take a pause on this," they just are not interested in that point. It's emotions. And so, fortunately, if we communicate properly, staff communicates and says, "Well, we're going to call the police," that generally jars folks' emotions, and sometimes that gets them to go. But there have been a few times where we've responded. In every situation, it's resolved itself. But those are just a couple examples that I can think of.
And I don't know, Councilor Langer, I don't know what specifics there were when 2010, when I started with CIS. When I first started, one of my first tasks was to come here and do workplace violence training, and because there were some issues going on, they didn't divulge the specific issues with the employees were dealing with back in 2010. But that was one of my first tasks to start. I started with CIS, so it's a very clear memory to me, and coming here and doing the training with all your staff. So there were some events back then, but I don't know specifically what they were.
So in that particular example, I suppose we'd be using the section F, the last couple sentences says that including but not limited to conduct that creates unreasonable noise or conduct that consists of loud or boisterous physical behavior. That sounds a little bit vague, so it's sort of up to somebody's interpretation, and I'm wondering how's that measured?
Well, I know how I would measure it. Maybe others in the room will have a different measurement, but to me, is if I was a city staff member, which I was for a number of years, and if people are using a vulgar, abusive language, making verbal threats to me or to my staff, that would rise to that level. If they're really threatening to harm me or threatening to harm my staff, and that's where I think this would start kicking in. If they were, it could be that perhaps they're taking their paper materials and are shredding it and throwing it, or throwing it in the face of staff members could be another example. And it's just those kind of almost to a disorderly conduct level, if you can think of it from that perspective. And when I view this, and we hear about workplace violence issues almost on a daily basis anymore, and all entities, public and private, are looking at ways to protect their employees because of all the activities going on in the workplace. And again, this is just a tool to be used, and it kind of sets the tone, I would say, from the policy board and administration, that you're not going to allow your employees to be treated that way. I know when I was an administrator, I wouldn't expect my employees to be verbally abused, threatened, either on the phone or in person. That if that was going on, that they either needed to disconnect that phone call, or they needed to have other staff come in or call law enforcement to have them come in and have that individual removed. So it's just kind of what level and what kind of policy do you want to set for your staff?
Yeah. I think that it's a good idea to continue to work on this. I see that it's just a draft and there's some holes in there. I don't want there to be a barring of dispute, but I think that having cooler minds prevail on dispute resolution is a good idea. To have that reminder of, hey, you know, it's okay to be on two different sides of the fence, but let's try to come together and form a solution to the problem and not just throw rocks at each other. I think that having something like that in place in the city of Sherwood would be a good thing. I have experiences, Councilor Grant spoke of it up at the Snyder Park, the kids riding the picnic tables with their skateboards, and told them that that's not okay. As a mom, not as a counselor, and there were expletives used, and so on me, and so I called the police. But I think that I think that having a culture of respect is a good idea. But I don't want it to be in the form of we're not going to accept dispute, but in the form of, hey, we're going to dispute in a respectful manner to each other. I think that's a good idea.
Do I have a consensus? Do we want to keep working on this, or?
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Mayor, is-
I think that I'd like to see more work done in it, and I'm supportive of if you make some good changes on it. I think it's better than the trespass for us because we don't have to go and get so involved. And usually after one or two times, I think the person would learn. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea. So, keep working on it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Everybody shook their head on that, right? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Our next new business is Resolution 2013-065, extending the Portland General Electric Company franchise agreement through June 30th, 2014. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, you've done this a couple times in the last year and a half. It's usually been on your consent agenda, and we put it on the new business. It could have easily been on consent, but we are still very much in negotiations with PGE. We have a 20-year plus franchise agreement with them in terms of negotiations. We were hoping to be done by the end of December 2013. We're not going to make that, and we are asking for another 6 months. I don't want to take another 6 months. I think we can get this wrapped up in January or February, and I just need an extension from you through a resolution process, as you've done in the past, to extend the current contract.
Any questions?
So what seems to be the sticking point? Time?
Excuse me. We're not entirely sure. We sent them a draft, our most recent draft of a new franchise, and we got back from them sort of a matrix of issues. But those really need to be narrowed, and so we have asked them to mark up our draft franchise and send it back, and that'll help us narrow the issues. And at that point, we can sit down with them and really start hammering out a final document. And if, you know, any of after we narrow the issues, there are any real sticking points, we obviously come back to you for guidance on how to resolve those. So there are a number of issues out there. As I say, it's like a two-page matrix, but I'm not sure which ones are the big ones and which ones are easily resolved.
And Chris, can you give some context that in the jurisdictions that your firm works with, Hillsborough being one of them, that these negotiations unfortunately sometimes drag on a little longer, and you seem to have the same debate city to city to city with PGE?
It really, I mean, Nancy Werner, frankly, carries the heavy load on that subject, and I asked her about this one time. It's the same people for PGE, and we represent, 12 or 15 municipalities in the metro area. So very often she's sitting down with the same guy she just negotiated with over in Hillsborough, now over in Happy Valley, and he brings up the same issues. We're like, didn't we just resolve this over there? Yeah, well, this is a different ballgame. So, you end up negotiating the same things over and over again. And yes, sometimes they do tend to drag on longer. The sense I'm getting from this one is that I think there is clear willingness on both parties to move ahead fairly quickly. I don't think the parties are very far apart. A lot of the issues I saw in the matrix, to the extent I understand them, seem fairly minor. So I think that, having the expectation that this could be wrapped up in February is probably reasonable.
So the intent, after negotiating and figuring out what the sticking points are, that's an interesting term. Don't remember using that a lot, but that we would sign again a 20-year agreement.
I think we're talking more like 15 years at this
15,
point, so,
okay.
yeah.
And so you made a point of comparison that the same issues PGE has with one municipality they have with the other. What are the unique differences between a PGE franchise agreement with, say, Happy Valley and a PGE franchise agreement with Sherwood?
Yeah, frankly, I don't know, and I don't want to shoot from the hip. That's really a much better question for Nancy, and I'd be glad to get back to you on that.
I mean, I'm just curious in that they provide the same service no matter
Right.
whether you have a
Right.
Sherwood zip code or a Estacada zip code
It may have to do with undergrounding requirements. I don't know. A lot of things that
or
cities like to see.
right-of-way requirements.
Right-of-way
okay.
requirements, right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council on this item?
Make a motion?
I move we adopt Resolution 2013-065, a resolution extending the Portland General Electric Company franchise agreement through June 30th, 2014.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Citizens' comments. Susan Claus. If you're waiting to talk, please fill out one of the forms in the back and hand it over to Sylvia, please.
Susan Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. One of the things is the subject matter that you were just discussing, none of that paperwork was in the city council packet. I don't know how we get a copy of that or how the citizens track that, but I want to be on that list, whatever that is. What I just passed out to you is there's a city interpretation on signature gathering, and the city code that's involved here, it says no signature sheet may be circulated by more than one person. Each signature sheet must contain a statement signed by the circulator that each circulator who signed the sheet did so in the circulator's presence, and to the best of the circulator's knowledge, each elector is a legal elector of the city, and that information placed on the sheet by such elector is correct. The city has made an interpretation, I think, and Chris Crean can tell us, either through the city attorney's office. I don't think Sylvia made the interpretation, and the city council was copied on this. They've made the interpretation that that is two separate people. At the state and at the county level, you can sign a petition and as the elector, and then you can also sign at the bottom as a circulator, and they're called e-sheets. So it's done at the state level, done at the county level. We have an interpretation now at the city that's not city code. So first of all, I think it's an incorrect interpretation. The remedy for that they're saying is that if the city holds fast, which in Sylvia's email, it says the city stands, stands firm on this interpretation, and circulation of e-sheets is not allowed in the city under the current code. So the remedy that they're telling us is that you have to go to court. The problem is when there are interpretations of the code, it's the city council's responsibility for the interpretation. You can take different councils' advice, but it's the city council who does the interpretation of the code in our town. So my suggestion is, and this is of course, within the time frame of, there's some petitions out there being circulated, and this has thwarted that e-sheet effort, which is basically to address technology and people who want to sign a petition, want to do it online. What they do is they go to a website, they pull down the petition, they sign it as the elector, and then they sign at the bottom as the circulator, and then they send the original wherever they're directed to send it. And then it's counted toward the signature verification. So the problem here is in Sherwood, we've made an absolute interpretation that I think is inaccurate. The wrong person made it. If it was Paul, he was the one that was copied on Paul Elsner. I think the city council has to look into this. I think it needs to make a correction, and I think that we should look to the state and look to the county and look to our citizens. We have some citizens who are homebound, but they have the ability to be on the computer, and getting citizens every avenue of so they can participate in the process is appropriate, and I can't imagine that our town wouldn't want to be involved in that. So that's there, and I would also suggest that since Barry Elsner and Hammond is our main contract attorney, that we get an outside attorney, set of attorneys, have nothing to do with the city, give you guys advice that are not in the middle of all of the city business. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. City manager, could you, I don't know much about this, so can you get back with us on it? Just some information on it?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. R clause?
Robert James, Clause 2221, Southwest Pacific Highway. I had an incident with one of the counselors recently, and my son, who's a fairly well-known criminal defense attorney, advised me to do something. And after tonight, absolute necessity, carry a tape recorder. Have a digital recorder. He said anything it said, have a record of it. Then when you go to court and you take a deposition, you can go after perjury. If you're going to tune and make this town this adversarial, if I were some of you people, I'd be very careful what I say when you talk to people, because they're going to be monitoring you. But I put a thing in front of you tonight that involves public safety. For 8 years now, the highway at what's commonly called Chicken Creek has been degrading. The wetlands has been degraded, and that's not my evaluation, that's Clean Water Services. And additionally, the highway is starting to settle. No question of that anymore, it's moved. 8 years ago, Ron Krupp went to Schultz, and Schultz said he wasn't interested in participating, even if ODOT would pay for it. Problem is, you misdirected water from all of the subdivisions, including Woodhaven, out of Cedar Creek, and you ran them back through Chicken Creek. That started the degradation. Then you proceeded to let people like the Elks and Shannon expand without stormwater facilities. Now you've got a situation where the highway is deteriorating. You recently have an application for Mr. Doyle to expand his parking lot, and he has made some amazing statements, and they've been accepted as fact by your staff. The problem is the observation and the physical deterioration make those not only problematical, they probably make them both spurious and mendacious. Now what I'm telling you is Mr. Gall has a meeting on the 20th. Diane Taniguchi-Dennis, who replaced Mr. Cruz, who Mr. Cruz tried to get Mr. Schultz to solve this problem. And of course, the problem was if you solve this problem, East Cedar Creek Way can be built easily. Now, I'm not going to go into motives here because those will be a matter of deposition. We first have paid $3,400 to appeal Mr. Doyle's decision at the Planning Commission. we get some things reversed there, or we take it to LUBA. And then for the various people involved, we'll go to the next step, which is litigation. I've been looking for, but I'm not going to avoid this litigation. We've set aside the necessary funds with Susan's blessings to do that. But I'm telling you, you better take a look at what you're doing on that highway. It is moving now. It will finish moving more. And incidentally, so you don't get any ideas, this is not mine, it's your expert who said when you cut underneath Hadley and you directed that, and he stamped all those approvals and was willing to testify and did, that you're the sine qua non, but for you it would not happen. And the deterioration is the natural probable consequences. Now, while I care what you do, I don't, because I'm not involved. We have lifted ourselves out of this. It is beyond our control. It is your nuisance creation that's doing it. Now, well, I will finish with just a minute and say this is just exhausting administrative remedies and reaching finality. The damage there is into the $1.5 million range on us and probably $5 million on the highway. You have a chance to correct it, as Schultz did, as Patterson did, as Pessimer did. But since you're the only agency that will not go to a meeting, will not attend the meeting to take any remedial actions.
Thank you, Jim.
You're going to get the benefit of the credit. Thank you, William.
Mara Broadhurst.
Mara Broadhurst, 28440 Southwest Lad Hill Road, Sherwood, Oregon. This is my opinion and concerns on Sherwood cronyism. Listen up, Sherwood. There's going to be some changes around here. Don't make us tell you twice. What part of no don't you understand? Justice will be dictated, and Sherwood will be changed to sure won't. The cronies will decide which businesses can come and which will be targeted for boycott, how long they stay open, and who will shop there. The cronies know it all and will determine city policies. Any councilors who disagree will be recalled. Positions to be filled by loyal cronies. Don't be fooled policy. Only believe electronic reader board 24-hour subliminal messages and Facebook propaganda. Big money policy. Staff to be fired. Crony VIG tax to pay for recalls and appeals. No growth policy. No new roads where kids want to play. Properties will be kept from developing to force distress sales. Get in bed with the devil policy. Anyone caught sleeping with the devil will be punished. The devil will include all city staff, councilors, mayors, past and present, any outside builder, or anyone standing in the way of cronies squeezing every penny out of their land. Cronies reserve the right to change devil designation if more profits can be made. Aristotle said man is, by nature, a political beast. Controversy is stimulating, and politics makes strange bedfellows. Don't let the unintended consequences of activism be discrimination and elitism. Decades of demonology have made constructive fraud a hobby and muckraking a political pastime. Should as long as cronies say so be added to the end of our Pledge of Allegiance? Mudslingers didn't write the Constitution. They hijacked the sign code and maybe due process, but hopefully not the TSP. In 2006, the Planning Commission decided to allow parking on both sides of the neighborhood route designed Cedarbrook Way. This had a definite influence on how the area would develop. There are possibly more changes coming to the area with the Brownstone PUD and rezone. From Handley Street on, the collector designation of Cedarbrook Way is in effect. The integrity of collector road standards needs to be maintained for it to function properly, regardless of any other land use changes. Please scrutinize the whole area. Protecting the rest of Cedar Creek wetlands from the impact of building and development needs to be a priority. How much pressure is to be tolerated by pressure groups before due process for all suffers? The staff is experienced and dedicated and a major factor in getting Sherwood to number 5 small town in America. They are good at their jobs. Let them work. Maybe they'll get us to number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. I have one more. Misplaced it. Scott Oldham.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Scott Oldham. I'm a painter. I'm a painter, and I'm working in your town. I'm from North Plains, a small town like yours. Not number 5, but we're working on it. I work for a company called Edwards Painting, who's doing work on the cannery back here with the condominiums. They were hired by a company called Keyway, or it was a Keyway Corp. The company, as we were working for them, it's not the greatest of companies. I heard everything that's going on about throwing rocks and all these different settlements that need to happen. Got me thinking about our own situation, and with Edwards Painting, when they were hired on by Keyway, they have a long-term relationship with Keyway. They've been there with them for many, many years, so Keyway is very familiar with the painting that they're using. I've been working for them along with Wyatt back here for about 6 months or so. Edwards Painting has been on probation with the state, with the Bureau of Labor and Industries, with their apprenticeship program. They were working apprentices out of ratio and had wage issues and so forth. Bully went on to say that during that probation, if they were to have, subvert the law any more, that they would then probably have a discussion about them throwing them out of the apprenticeship scenario. And that sounds about right for that. But what's happened to us since then, we are not working for them at this point. They have let us go for what we were doing, which was basically, we came in there and we started working there, and the treatment of the workers, the disrespect and the yelling and all these things that started happening to us, we realized that we wanted to get the workers together, talk about the fact that we weren't getting our wages paid and so forth like this. So Keyway, having a long relationship with them, we worked with them also over in Vancouver. On these jobs, there was a instance where there was drug use on the job, and to show you what they did, instead of addressing something like this, they simply wanted to shove that under the table and just forget about the whole thing. We also brought it to their attention that we didn't want to work around other people who were using drugs for safety reasons, obviously, and at which time we were then asked to of course, take drug tests, and the whole thing turned into, a week later, the man who originally came forward and said this is going on was fired. At this point now, we are working, contacting an agency to get to help, obviously, on this. And so there's actually a federal agency that's looking into all of this. And some of the things that they brought out is interrogation, threats, intimidation and surveillance, threats of surveillance, restraining, laid off employees, firing employees. This list goes on and on. But the reason we brought it here is because Keyway Corp is the person who has a long-term relationship with this. And I know that whenever you guys hire people, I mean, you can't look at everything, but it seems as though there ought to be something that you could look at before you hire contractors. We went out and made all these things have happened to us. We then brought this to the attention of Keyway Corp out here on the project about a week and a half ago, and their response, of course, to us was, well, why are you out here, blah, blah, blah. And then one of the employees of Keyway Corp then shoved me back and tore the sign, and then shoved again to get the rest of the sign and make sure it was torn down. We obviously left after that because we didn't want to escalate the situation. But I just wanted you guys to know what's going on over there at Keyway, and I would appreciate, I don't know really what I'm asking for you. I know what we're asking from everybody else, which is basically, we have these, we're running around just kind of telling everybody kind of what's happening, and we're sending these in kind of to Keyway and to the owners and developers and stuff, so they can be aware that this is going on, and hopefully this doesn't continue to happen, and hopefully we get some justice in the end.
Okay, thank you for, but I would think that was something probably want to go back to our city, talk to our assistant city manager. He's more in charge of the project, so.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I'll be glad to talk to you, but I want to clear one thing up right now.
Capstone?
Keyway Corporation works for Capstone. They have absolutely no contract with the city in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It's a private project.
Right, okay.
So, but I'll be happy to talk to you.
All right, thank you.
thank you. We, council announcements, we'll start with that one.
coming in.
Oh, okay. Just come on up and, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I just want to back up. Scott.
Name,
Oh,
just
sorry.
name and, what city you're from.
Wyatt McMahon from Portland, Oregon. I'll be real quick. I'm just going to sort of back up what Scott said. I think the major thing is too, is like this is happening in your town. I understand it's private. But we both come from communities that are like this town. And it's a nice project and, you know, it's going to be good for your community too. But I just want to like stress to make that project too, these contractors are actually really taking advantage and abusing people who actually live in the communities that we're trying to benefit. And I guess that's it. We also too, we have a pamphlet we made. There's a postcard in there too, and we're asking people to sign that and send it in. That's all.
All right, thank you. Council announcement, we'll start on this end tonight.
I just wanted to thank Joe for doing a great job of organizing the tree lighting and winter event that we had and Christmas tree lighting. It was awesome. The scene was great. It was freezing. I wore my snowsuit and I wasn't even embarrassed because it was that cold. But it was a great community event. I thought it was wonderful that you put up the giant tent to give people a little bit of relief from the cold, and lots of people came out and enjoyed the wonderful donations from businesses of the cookies and the hot dogs and the hot chocolate, and so I just wanted to thank you for giving sort of the extra, help to make sure that it was comfortable, even though the climate was pretty chilly that night. It was great.
I just have one announcement. We recently formed a citizen review committee to review the charter. We have members of our boards and commissions, each representing a board or a commission, and 3 members at large, and we meet every 2 weeks on a Thursday night right here. And all that information regarding the charter is on the website, and of course we'll be taking minutes, and there'll be an opportunity every night that the charter review committee meets for public comment if anybody has any suggestions or questions that they want to ask. And so just wanted to remind people that that'll be going on for the next couple of months. Thank you.
Linda, would you like to just let everybody know what the charter is again?
For those people in the audience who may not know, or anybody who will be watching at home at 3 a.m. when clearly there's nothing else on TV, the charter, we have a charter, and it is essentially our own local constitution. And we've made a number of changes over the years to the charter, and it's a very important document that we reference all the time. And the last time there were some suggestions made to amend the charter. We did not form a citizens review committee, and subsequently the voters didn't pass that. And I think it's always a good practice to make sure that your charter is practical, updated, applicable. And so one of the things that the committee will be reviewing is how often you should revisit your charter. In the same way that you revisit your lease or a business relationship you have with somebody, it's always a good practice to review it. And so what we're doing is we formed a citizens review committee, and I took input from all of the counselors, and we can continue to send information to the committee during the process, and then they will recommend our target, which is ambitious, is to have an election in May to make potentially some changes to the charter. And what I have advocated for, just me personally, is whatever changes the committee forwards to the voters, will be separated. So instead of lumped together into one, yes or no vote, we will separate out each major amendment. And we do have some just general cleanup and updating to do too. But, so the charter is, the current charter, which was last amended in 2005, is on the city website. You can pull it up. It's less than 10 pages long, and it's there for your review. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Folsom?
So we were just talking about the fact that the percussion ensemble used the Cannery Plaza last Friday night for an event. I was unable to attend because I had a commitment at the high school to do the dress rehearsal for the concert, but I actually went down while they were setting up. It was really interesting night because it was quite foggy down there, but it was very beautiful. I didn't get a chance to hear them. I talked to some of the band booster parents who had helped set that up, and they said it was a great event. But the next day I was at Albertsons, and they set up along the front of the wall and were playing, and it was amazing to have to get to see those high schoolers out there. You can go to the band website, and they do have CDs for sale. So if you want to support the band. And they're very skilled, and they've done quite well this year. Mr. Brant Stye is the director for the high school marching band this year, and this is his first year there, although he's been in the district for many years in the past as the Laurel Ridge band director. Just wanted to say thank you to the many people who came out to the Voices Christmas concert last weekend, and thank you, Mayor, for attending. It was a lot of fun. It was 130 performers on the stage, so. Yeah, it was, we've outgrown this stage, but that's okay. We'll talk about that in the next meeting. I just have to thank this wonderful community. The tree lighting was absolutely fantastic, although I could not feel my feet by the time it was over. And thanks to the Robin Hood Festival Association for organizing that. I don't think a lot of people realize that they do. They set everything up. They coordinate with the elementary school choir to get there, in the middle school and the high school choir director, and as well as organizing the parade. It was a very kind of small parade gathering because it was so cold, so the people at the end got a lot of candy. But Sylvia, thank you for your work on that. My children love being in that float, and it's very fun. So we appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to thank Sylvia as well as Public Works, Pam for driving, and I confess I have 3 Santa hats at home that belong to the city, which I will.
So cold we didn't take them off.
I wasn't going to take it off, and I'll bring those back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I want to thank the police department, did a great job, Public Works, Robin Hood Festival. Santa and I ran out of candy halfway down this street, so it got kind of ugly, but they did it. They followed us, and it was rather chilly out, so it was fun. Next, nobody else from council have anything, so go to city manager and department reports.
I have just a couple items to piggyback on Council President Henderson. The next meeting for charter review is in 2 nights in this room, which is December 19th at 6:30. The committee's only met once, but they're going to start diving in and start looking at specific sections. So it's going to be an interesting process. The other thing I wanted to note, we posted this today on the website, and it'll be in the Archer that's going to be coming out in the next week. We have a budget committee opening. So we take applications for board and commissions all the time, whether there's vacancies or not, but there is one vacancy potentially on the budget committee, and we're taking applications until 5 p.m. on January 17th. So about a month from now. But if you want to serve on the budget committee, now's the time to get your application in. So, and if the council can let folks know that are out there that would like to serve on that important committee, now's the time to get the applications in. So that's all I have, unless you have questions for myself or the staff.
Then we're going to adjourn into a URA Board of Directors meeting, but we'll take a 5-minute break.
We had boys choir, 14 middle school boys sing.